not give opportunities to others. So
I think some people are experiencing difficulties with the link. I used the link and it was fine for me, and at least a few others have joined. Professor Nima has also joined.
Good.
So very quickly, I'll introduce Professor Nima also to Dr. Sharan. He's the Dean of Students. So he heads the unit of which I am a part.
thank you, ma'am. In a technical sense, I'm called professor in charge. We don't have a formal dean of students affairs, so
Right.
it's equivalent, but not exactly the same.
Right. So Professor Nima is the Dean of Students, and he has three associate deans, one in charge of hostels, one for student events, and one for student welfare.
Right. Good evening, Dr. Nima.
Good evening, sir. Welcome to this session.
Hello.
So Professor Ganguly, do you want to cut the ribbon?
Oh, yeah, you want to start, right? Okay.
Yeah. You've muted yourself.
Yeah. So let me officially welcome Dr. Pratap Sharan from the Department of Psychiatry at All India Institute of Medical Sciences. We really are thankful to him, knowing how busy doctors are in AIMS and especially in COVID times. I'm really very thankful to Dr. Sharan in accepting our invitation to address the IIT faculty, and of course probably some students are also there. This was initially targeted to faculty. That's what I understand from Dr. Ritika, who is our Associate Dean of Student Welfare. It's a very good initiative, and we would like as many faculty to gain from this uh, his advice and guidance in times like this, which has been, caused disruption to people in their daily lives. We all have become, were started working very differently compared to our normal working. No shake hands, not having tea together, not going out for a coffee, things which dissipate many of our, this is my a layman's psychiatric understanding, that doing these things, help us dissipate a lot of stress and tension which is there in everybody's lives. Some people travel from outside, traffic, etc. So many things, daily life, of course, that is cut down. But you know, whole thing that it is so difficult. Somebody may be having children who are at different levels of education or employment opportunities, and other people having relatives, they have to attend to old people, they have to take them to hospitals, and hospitals are very difficult places these days. So with all that, I think it is very important for us to understand how to manage these times, and nobody better than Dr. Sharan to give his words of wisdom to us. So with that, Dr. Sharan, I would again welcome you to help IIT in these times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ganguly. I would like to thank IIT and particularly Professor Khera and Shachi Mathur and Vidushi for helping me join into the system. This is for me, it's a area of not interest. This is kind of has become a passion now. Particularly, like if I see my own growth as a doctor, is initially interested in patients, then I became interested in research. Then it was more about mentoring people, and now it is about student wellness. So student wellness actually takes about 50% of my time. and which is about 40 hours a week. So since the COVID, the work-life balance has gone, and there is a lot of things to be taken care of. And I'm very happy to be talking to you on this topic. I'll be sharing some slides so that um, are the slides visible?
Yes, yes, they are visible.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so as has been pointed out earlier, COVID-19 is a global health crisis. And although the effective vaccine is just around the corner, it's going to be some time before the world kind of gets back to normal, because the distribution of the vaccine to 6 billion people is not going to be done overnight. The other thing is that it is now very clear from what has happened with other pandemics is that they change the world in long term. They have long term effects. And so COVID-19 will also change the ways people work and study in a major way. Like the online teaching is here to stay in many ways, even if it's balanced with offline teaching to make it more wholesome with time. A LinkedIn report in October showed that about 40% of professionals were experiencing increased stress or anxiety. So that is almost kind of half of the people. And this is partly fueled by job uncertainty, but also by social isolation and the fear of contracting the disease. The toll on working parents is particularly high, and uh, this toll is kind of more on the women because they take care of children to a much larger extent, and 33% of working mothers were taking charge of the full child care, which means that they are practically doing two jobs every day. And that doing one job is stressful, doing two obviously is extremely tough. The other thing which is very clear is that we were caught unprepared, and there is a big gap between what is required for the mental health of or well-being of people and what is available. Uh, so there are studies which show that professionals have been affected. Like a study on software developers in 53 countries showed that the well-being and productivity of software developers was impacted, and various factors and subgroups were involved. But one thing which became clear was that the home office, since the office has shifted to people's homes, the home office ergonomics was making a major issue for them to work properly. There has been a study on professors which also shows that professors are also under stress. Uh, Vidushi shared this information with me, which shows that students in IIT Delhi have high rates of stress on various uh, parameters. Almost three-fourths of them said that they had difficulties, and these difficulties were related both to curricular issues about the study environment. They were missing the campus, particularly about peer interaction, hobbies, and they had anxieties about future careers, particularly because a lot of skill development does not happen online. Uh, the experience from various universities in the world is similar, that the rates of increased stress was reported in 71% in a US university, and the rates of actual anxiety depression is as high as about 50%. Suicidal ideas were reported by about one-fifth of students. And I was mentioning just before the talk that at AIMS itself we have kind of faced that in a very kind of a uh, critical way when three students, one student, one doctor, and one researcher died within a month of each other through suicide. So it is something which is real, and the mental health issues were brought out very poignantly for us, and it shook us in a way. Uh, The other studies also, it's a kind of experience from all over the world, from Spain, from US and other countries, that the rates of anxiety and depression and stress are anywhere between 20 to 50%. An important issue is that students seem to be affected more than the staff members. And like the study in the Spanish university showed that staff members had less stress as compared to students. It may be because they are more kind of used to handling stressful situations, or their lives may be more settled, while students had to think about their career issues also. When people are anxious, they feel less self-efficacy and they're able to do their work with less confidence. The educational disruptions have been a major problem in India, particularly from the northeastern states. So why is all this stress happening in the university setup? A major reason has been the massive, abrupt, and mandatory switch to work from home strategies. This is attended by the technical difficulties, not having enough space in one's home to work. Like if you have 4 people attending work or school from one home, it can be difficult to negotiate for space. Uh, the life has become very unidimensional, that earlier, like, people used to have a work and then they used to have life. Now everything is kind of intertwined, and that makes it very difficult. People are not able to switch off properly. Then the remote monitoring that happens makes people resentful as to why this monitoring is happening, why people are not believing their work per se. Earlier, this supervision would occur unobtrusively. Now it is becoming kind of more visible. So put on your camera, for example, is earlier you were in the class, no one had to ask you to put on your camera. Now it is being asked, and it feels that is the kind of the smallest example of monitoring. Many institutions have kind of put in much more intrusive methods of monitoring with or without the sometimes making it mandatory, and the more intrusive it is, the more resentment there is about it. Training and supervision have changed. So now there is a need for customized training that will increase engagement. So we have to use multimedia, we have to use more of scenarios, digital games, etc. And this means that teachers have had to learn different pedagogic approaches. Like, it's no longer just one kind of teaching that used to be practiced by a lot of teachers earlier. They have to use different approaches, and they have to learn new technologies. Now, even as they change, sometimes the students don't keep pace, and then there is a need to get into discussion with students so that they think about these technologies, they reflect upon them, and if they have misgivings, they kind of revise their ideas about these approaches so that they participate in a more engaged way, in a more enthusiastic manner. A major problem has been assessments. So like earlier, it was very easy to give a feedback because the student was available and you could monitor in an informal manner. Now assessments have become much more formal, and instead of processes, only results are easily assessed. So assessments have become a major issue, and we are still struggling with it. Teamwork has become much more problem. So students who work virtually in team projects may have less cohesion than when they are face to face, and they may have more conflicts because sometimes there is less communication, particularly face to face communication, and that means that it's very easy to become a little paranoid about the other person, and this can result in performance losses for the teams. Uh, so one of the reasons, as I mentioned, was that there is a lack of communication richness. The other thing is that if a team member wants help, uh, in the virtual areas, they have to assert for help. They have to say that I need help, while in the non-virtual area, people can make out by seeing them that they need some kind of help, and they hold out. They help the person even if they have not really asked for it. Uh, to make teamwork better, teachers will have to pay attention to the flow of communication. So they should be very tell the teams clearly what the goals are, what the processes are, what happens if conflicts occur, and how to resolve them. All these things used to be happening in a more informal way earlier. Teachers will also have to provide opportunities for non-task interactions among students to allow for emotional connection and bonding so that the teamwork improves. Mentoring has become a major, is much more difficult now than earlier, and mentors will now have to balance optimism with realism. Professor Ganguly was mentioning that fortunately in the job market, IIT is doing as well as earlier, if not better, but things have changed. And for the normal kind of schooling or the normal academics, the teachers should be empathically discussing their travails and hopes. They should be evaluating how they are doing with the new technology, and they should be bolstering the confidence of students that they will be able to achieve their goals with certain changes, with certain blocks, but ultimately they will reach their goals. When students come to you for that they are looking for jobs, you might have to kind of tell them to become more adaptive about your career choices, that they should be willing to explore new options and future work scenarios. They should also be more prepared to wait for the job, because the job search might become longer, and they may be. Look, we are moving towards what is called the gig economy, which means that jobs are much less. They are given for short periods of time. They are contracted out, and there are many professionals who kind of work freelance, going from one contract to the other. So these kind of changes are expected to accelerate over time. There are big gaps which are not covered by online medium at all, like laboratory skills and practices, the academic interactions of in which there used to be discussions, debates, broadening of ideas, and close monitoring. The library, to some extent, library has gone digital now, but it still plays a role for many students. The community engagement, socializing, all these things are not well covered by the online platforms. And there are many bodies which have looked at it seriously. And in India, the Indian Academy of Pediatrics has recently come up with guidelines which suggest that co-curricular activities are probably quite as important as curricular learning, and they are emphasizing this. The IAP is more about school students, but it covers people till adolescence. So 15, 16, 17 years olds are covered in their guidelines, and they suggest that co-curricular activities should be emphasized more than they were earlier. And there is also a need to introspect on our part regarding online training platforms as to their limits, particularly their accessibility and equity challenges. In terms of personal impact, there is a major issue about social loneliness. So work from home and the change in the workplace reorganization has led to a decrease in social connections. As Professor Ganguly was mentioning earlier, that we don't shake hands, we don't go out to have a cup of coffee together, and so on. And this impacts our mental and physical health. Loneliness is now recognized as a major problem for many people, and it results from a person feeling that their intimate and social needs are not adequately met. So the objective thing of not meeting people per se is not so problematic, but if a person starts feeling that no one cares for them, that they have been left alone, that is something which is more closely associated with a mental pain. And if a person feels lonely, usually they don't feel committed to their work, they don't feel committed to other people, and their performance comes down. Loneliness would require a certain amount of intervention through wellness programs. So at AIMS this year, we started a lot of WhatsApp clubs, which for students, there are 10 such clubs where people are joining in through WhatsApp, but then they do certain things together. Uh, as mentioned already, there is the academic demand and low resources can lead to stress, and many students feel the study conditions have deteriorated for them. there is a greater risk of burnout from them, and which is essentially a feeling of exhaustion and a distant attitude towards studies. Burnout also occurs to faculty to quite some extent when uh, like we'll talk about later, but actually going online has not saved on time because we have had to shift our gears, and a lot of time has had to be spent on uh, uh, lecture, making new lessons and doing them in a new way. And teachers also are facing this issue about burnout to quite some extent. Continuous exposure to bad news leads to rumination, where a person becomes kind of oriented and they value in issues related to distress, and this becomes something which is quite stressful for them. Some people have started misusing substances, particularly because they are left alone at home, and they may a lot of their engagements, which used to be there earlier, that has come down, and that has led to increase in rate of substance misuse in terms of alcohol as well as other substances. One thing to remember about the well-being issue is that mental health problems will remain a long-term issue. So it's not that once the COVID infection is controlled in terms of the infection part of it, it will not, the mental health issues will not resolve immediately. The effects will last for a few years from now. Uh, so for these kind of issues with the students, you should be thinking about providing immediate tangible resources like information and uh, training. Like if like for online shifting, it requires a certain amount of hand holding, particularly for people who come from deprived backgrounds. Uh, Psychological resources are required more rather than less because students feel distant from you. So feedback, support, and inspiration through regular contact with students using maybe video calls or group activities together might be useful. It is one thing which is very important is that if people are ill, they should take care of themselves. They should get back to health before they kind of get back to studies. And uh, so in that sense, people should go through their, if required, their quarantine periods, through their isolation periods, and they should be feeling fully fit before they join back. You should encourage students to access counseling and therapy, and sometimes this is being done now increasingly through internet-based brief interventions because they would need that. We should be aware that all people are not equal to begin with, and there can be uh, some of them have more difficulties managing. Like people, there are many families which would have lost jobs, and this leads to a spiral of adversity for the whole family. When this happens, usually a person goes into what is called a zero-sum mindset, which means that they feel that resources are finite, and if one person gets a resource, the other person will get less. So the zero-sum mindset means that if I have lost, if my family has lost, someone else would have gained it, and if someone else is being given any resource, uh, it means that I am denied the resource. Whether or not I have actually been denied, I start feeling that I have been denied. So, uh, lab- if a person is coming from a situation where their families are in financial trouble, you may have to be more empathic with in handling them. Similarly, uh, members of vulnerable groups may face a greater risk for health as well as economic issues. Similarly, men are more likely to have health threats. They are more likely to get infected, while women are likely to be more affected by the economic and social consequences of these infections. So one has to have a slightly different approach to how one is dealing with different groups of people. Uh, this kind of differential approach is obtained through diversity training, which is done at an institutional level. So this is not something which you will be directly responsible for, but being sensitive is something that all of us can do. A very interesting finding that has come up through research during COVID time is that women leaders have tended to do actually better. And what is believed now is that it's not being a woman or a man, but feminine values and traits like community orientation in moral decision making and being more attentive to communication styles is effective in crisis management. So the leadership is now changing towards a more holistic kind of an approach. One has to be aware, particularly that if some of people have young children at home, or if they're living, there's a difference if a person is living alone, is living with others, and particularly if they're living with young children, and that can have a major bearing on how they're coping with the rest of the things that are happening. And in this situation, young women with small children, they are the most vulnerable. Uh, Personality types also are mattering. So, in general, COVID has led to people becoming more introverted, and more introverted people usually have more negative emotions. So, the way to counter it is to increase social engagement. Uh, since work has become more predictable, some people who are very rule bound, they are very conscientious, they do their work in a very, very committed and perseverant manner. They have become very unsettled. So normally they are the people who like to, who enjoy work, but the unpredictable work makes them uncomfortable. And so there is a requirement to help these people define their job roles and their work goals so that they can start feeling comfortable and work to their satisfaction. Uh, the leaders' approaches, I have already mentioned that more participative and empathic leadership is working better at this time. I had mentioned this about the Indian Academy of Pediatric guidelines. I'm just showing that they have certain recommendations about when schools or colleges should reopen and how to go about managing remote and uh, on-site learning. One of the major recommendations that they have made is that informal learning of psychosocial empowerment and daily living skills are to be encouraged more than they were done earlier. And they feel that it is almost as important as formal learning. So some of the things which may apply, or at least we should think about at college level also, is that they're saying that instead of the content, we should be teaching students how to learn better. So we should make them scholars. They should learn to learn rather than being taught content alone. Uh, they have also suggested that digital technology should be strongly supplemented by in-between technologies like SMS feedback and by non-technology based remote learning. So they are actually suggesting that at least for people who have difficulty in accessing the internet in the way that some other people can, some of the material should be sent as hard copies to their home, and uh, well, of the interactions they can, like earlier, like people used to study through postal methods. So some of those things may need to be reworked. Uh, their suggestions are pretty strict about the screen time for even learning issues, and they suggest that each session should not last more than 45 minutes. Maximum there should be about 4 sessions a day, even though I know that even in schools this is not being followed. And they suggested that at least 25% time of the school during the school should be spent on co-curricular activities, so which is much higher than what was done earlier. The earlier thing was, I think, closer to about 10%. There are various types of co-curricular activities that they have suggested. So putting it together, I have talked to a few faculty members about how they manage the shift to the online teaching, and one of them mentioned that many of us had only taught in our classrooms, supplemented by online learning management systems. From an instructional design perspective, lessons needed to be restructured for an online setting. And she particularly described her experience about a collaborative workshop. So she says that I had to deliver a collaborative workshop where students work in teams to develop a concept from design to prototype. To do this, I brainstormed with departmental colleagues. Then I participated in online workshops to learn about virtual tools and collaborative spaces, like some things like the Microsoft Teams. When delivering the workshop, sometimes I felt like an air traffic controller, as I directed students into breakout channels to do group work, opened interactive whiteboards with prepared activities, set timers, posted assignments, and gave feedback on the progress. So she mentions that my learning, the fact that she had to learn herself, made her more empathic with her students because she faced a lot of difficulties in the unfamiliar learning environment herself. So I started posting recorded voiceover PowerPoint presentations for students to follow them at their own pace. Even in normal times, she says that every student is not equally motivated, and the uncertainty caused by pandemic could negatively influence their outlook on learning. So I decided to be aware of students' well-being and to allow them time to process the content and tasks associated with the course. To encourage communication, I asked students to turn on the cameras and frequently visited the project teams in their breakout rooms, and we met for video sessions to see the project status. She also adds that the importance of providing the students opportunity to interact was something that I had underestimated. Many of them were isolated and really missed student life and the informal exchanges that take place at university. I used the time that they took in adjusting to the virtual communication platform to improve group dynamics by making time for small talk. So in the beginning of the course, she gave them opportunity to kind of get to talk to each other and get to know each other better. I encourage students to stay connected to me by providing an evening Zoom office hours. I run this kind of a thing every week on Tuesdays from 9 to 10:30, where any student in the Department of Psychiatry can join my room and we talk. So it's a bit of a tutorial, a bit of fun, that kind of thing. Uh, this provided an engaging learning opportunity for my students, and it required investing a significant amount of time. So what she says is that actually going online did not help in decreasing the time that she was spending on teaching. It actually increased it substantially. It was actually 50% more than what she used to spend earlier, but she feels that it was absolutely necessary. Uh, some of this investment obviously will come down with time. So after you have established your methods, probably it will become as efficient or maybe even more efficient than offline teaching. But in the beginning, we have to make uh, extra time. Okay, so a little bit about dealing with stress. There are 4 layers of support which is usually available. The first layer is to help oneself. The second one is to be able to help other people in the community and get their help. The third is to get help from occupational units like the Student Wellness Center or the Employees Health Center. And the next is more professional kind of services. So there are 8 dimensions to wellness. I'll use disorders, and all people live longer, healthier lives by focusing.
Sir, I think the voice is not audible.
Okay, I'll redo it.
I think you need to
Sure.
share screen with computer sound, then the sound
Yeah.
transmits.
Sure. I'll
Thanks.
do that. I'm actually not so used to the Teams, so it's
Right, yeah. So when the share option comes at the bottom, it'll ask you, I think,
yeah, yeah,
share screen with sound. Include computer sound, it says.
yeah. Nature and others brings. Was this heard better?
Yes, sir.
Now it's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, we got the audio now. Yeah.
Improving wellness by taking action on each of these dimensions addresses early mortality from treatable and preventable conditions. Embracing wellness is about life and living and becoming the healthiest you possible. Listen to your feelings, express them to people you trust, and maintain a positive outlook. Make it a point to understand your finances, establish good financial habits, and plan for the future. A sense of belonging and a reliable support system help during difficult times. Make at least one social connection daily. Seek advice from peers or support groups. And create healthy friendships. Enhancing your connection to self, nature, and others brings balance and peace to your life. Take time to discover what values and beliefs are most important to you. Look for satisfaction from things you're passionate about, whether it is through work, school, or volunteering. Reduce your risk of many illnesses by increasing activity levels according to your abilities, getting restful sleep at night, choosing healthy foods, and exploring outdoors to reduce stress and increase energy levels. Be a lifelong learner by expanding your knowledge and finding creative outlets that stimulate your mind and sense of curiosity. Be open to new ideas, insights, and wisdom. A positive environment has a calming effect. Find surroundings that encourage good physical and mental health, and where you also feel safe. At SAMHSA, we envision a future in which people with mental and/or substance use disorders, and all people, pursue optimal health, happiness, recovery, and a full and satisfying life.
Okay. Okay, so they're taking care of yourself. These are times of uncertainty, and the way you kind of handle your perceived stress and how you navigate through adversity will determine both your own well-being as well as your leadership. And for this, there are certain tips that can be given. That one is self-compassion. So there will be times when you feel frustrated, but the way you treat yourself should be similar to the way your friends or mentor treat you, rather than you're pushing yourself too hard. You should reflect on the purpose of what you have been trying to achieve over the long period of time. So even when you are stuck during the period of pandemic, you should reflect on your values and do the thing that you consider are important. Sometimes you may have to readjust to your circumstances in the here and now, but if you are clear about what your long-term goals are, you kind of uh, stay, uh, well, you keep working towards it. Uh, the Sometimes it may be important to reframe the situation. Like COVID is a bit of a block, but it can also be an opportunity to do innovations. Like all of us have probably learned new ways of teaching, which we were stuck in old ways of teaching, particularly for quite some time, and then suddenly the online media opened up, and we are doing much more of blended work now. We should think positively, and for that, sometimes we may need to take breaks from work and go out with people, spend a little bit of time with others. Uh, One should seek a sense of achievement. So sometimes the big projects are not coming, in which case maybe what you can do is to do this, the projects which are going on, and even with your team members, sometimes you may have to start praising for smaller things, because big praises are not happening, in the sense that you don't have so many conferences as used to be earlier. At least for young people, the chances have come down. So you may have to uh, give them praise for smaller things that they may achieve on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes you should be looking for achievement outside your job, like developing a new skill. We should be open to accepting that we are human beings and we are vulnerable ourselves. And even if you talk about this vulnerability to your team members, they feel better about it because they feel that you are one amongst them. But as a leader, if you're talking about your vulnerability, also tell them about what you have done to take care of that vulnerability. Because if you just tell them that things are bad, it demoralizes. But if you tell them that things are tough and you have kind of thought of ways of managing the situation, it encourages them. There will be times when you may need to look for outside support, and you may need a sounding board. And there you should be calling on trusted family member or mentor or peer, ideally from a different organization, so that you can be completely neutral opinions may be obtained. It's and as I showed in the small video, that one should practice self-care. So we come to taking care of your students. Uh, some of the issues that are there with the students is that teachers carry subconscious expectations of students and student behaviors. Like they feel that students should be cooperative, cordial, compliant, and punctual. They should participate in their learning actively, and they are expected to be coming from supportive and loving families who are readily available and have adequate resources. We feel that the students should value our efforts and hold us in high esteem. They should be intelligent and they should also be eating right. They shouldn't be smoking. They should be fit and they should get 8 hours of sleep every night and do all their work alongside that. They should respond to teaching and lead long, productive, healthy, and stress-free lives. Look, these are normative expectations. All of us have it. And the problem is that most kids cannot live up to this. These subtle expectations act as this set of entitlements. And when a student doesn't meet these expectations, we don't really know how to deal with them. So there are certain things that can help you in kind of doing it better. One of the things is called mindfulness.
Check it out. Okay, Dante, now this is what I want you to do. I want you to get all the files. Sabrina, there is nothing to argue about. 9 p.m. is your curfew and that's it.
Dad, I'm not a little kid. Billy gets to stay out till 10. You and Mom just don't get it.
Okay, so what do you think, Dante? What? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Moon. I missed that. Gosh darn Durango, pay attention. Terrible.
Dante, you'll never believe what happened to me today.
Terrible, terrible, terrible. You know what, Durango? We don't really need you anymore since you're so terrible.
Dante, isn't that great? Dante, did you hear me?
See what I mean? It's possible to leap unconsciously into a future which has yet to happen or slip quickly into the past. The problem is, your time in these realms is often spent ruminating about stressful events. What's more is, you miss out on precious time to grab opportunities, to engage fully in life, and to just be. You miss out, my friends, on the present. So what can you do to savor the here and now? Let's look at an ancient Buddhist practice known as mindfulness. Mindfulness is linked to many benefits.
Hello? Oh, hi. Neutrino sent me here today. I've been kind of stressed out. She said you might be able to help.
Oh, hey Dante, perfect timing. I've been talking about mindfulness.
Oh, well, I don't think I can make my mind blank. No, I'm not like a yoga person. That stuff doesn't work for me.
No problem then, because the goal of mindfulness is certainly not to create a blank slate.
Well, what's it about then?
Have a seat, I'll show you. Now, first things first, relax and close your eyes. Trust me. Now, bring your attention to your breath. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. I want you to engage your senses fully. Notice each sight, touch, and sound within your mind's eye. Your thoughts may wander.
Oh, shucks, I can't do this.
No, you're doing great, Dante. This time, instead of reacting to your thoughts, I want you to pretend you are just an observer watching your thoughts float by without reaction or judgment.
An observer? Okay, I'll try it.
Mindfulness disentangles you from reacting to particular emotions and thoughts as you become a non-judgmental observer of yourself. Mindfulness can be practiced in many different ways. There are meditations, physical practices. You can even practice mindful eating. The important thing to remember is each path is an invitation to wake up, experience the fullness of your life, and to transform not your problems, but your relationship with your problems.
Wow, I was able to think about all my problems without losing it. That was, well, different and good. Thank you.
Anytime, my friend, anytime.
Okay, the next video is about empathy.
I think sound didn't get shared again.
Okay, sorry.
Words when mirror neurons fire those of the people around us. When we witness someone speaking about a moving experience, we naturally and unconsciously mimic their facial expressions. This facial mimicry sends signals to our emotional brain called the limbic brain. The resulting signals prompt us to attune to the person we're relating to by feeling similar emotions as well. So, the essential ingredient needed to show empathy is our presence. If we want to stand in another's shoes, we have to be willing to give them our wholehearted attention. It can help to look at their eyes in particular. The eyes are the primary area where we express our emotions. In addition to presence, it can help to learn a few verbal cues that let the other person know you understand them. Occasionally, it can help to reflect what you hear them saying. When you reflect, you're not dissecting, analyzing, or reinterpreting the meaning of their words. Instead, you are accurately summarizing or paraphrasing them. You can repeat what they said with the preface, so what you're saying is, echoing like this lets them know that you hear their words and that you're with them. You won't always be accurate when you echo their words. Often you will miss the essence of what they're conveying, particularly if you're in an argument with them or they're speaking about a delicate subject, either for yourself or them. It can be helpful then to follow a reflection with the question, is that what you were saying? Or did I miss anything? Asking for confirmation like this can be humbling, but it's the only way for you to know whether they feel that you understand their experience. You might also ask, do you have something more to say? This question is like a gift. You're granting them the space to unload their burden by inviting them to share all of their thoughts and feelings on a particular topic. This offer allows them to empty the storehouse of emotions by saying all that needs to be said. Once you have listened to someone and fully understood him or her, it can help to acknowledge and appreciate their experience. You can say something like, I can see why you experience it that way. Acknowledging in this way shows respect for their point of view and experience. The word respect etymologically comes from the Latin roots re, which means again, and spect, as in spectacle, something that can be seen or viewed. So respect is to look again, to honor or consider the validity of another's experience. While I have just offered a formula, empathy isn't formulaic. It's natural. It primarily requires that we be willing to let go of our point of view, to instead give them your full attention and step into their shoes. Likely, it will be the greatest gift you grant to someone. If they can feel and sense you care simply through the quality of your attention, they will feel relieved and supported.
When someone reaches out to you, you want to be how to actively listen and help a friend going through a tough time. Ask open questions. Instead of asking yes or no questions, try and keep them open-ended. These are the how, what, where, who, and why questions. For example, instead of saying, has this been going on a long time? Ask, how long has this been going on? Summarize. Summarize what they've said and say it back to them. This helps to show the person that you've been listening and that you understand their situation. Reflect. Repeating back a word or a phrase can encourage people to go on and expand their thoughts. If someone says, it's been really difficult recently, you can keep the conversation going by simply repeating a word they used in their sentence. This really helps people to open up. Clarify. Sometimes a friend can gloss over an important point. Saying something as simple as, tell me more about that, can not only clarify the point for you, but for them as well. Give words of encouragement. It sounds obvious, but a go on or I see can really give much needed encouragement and help the person to continue talking. Don't feel the need to fill the silences in a conversation though, as quiet moments are good and give the person time to think about their feelings or what they'd like to say next. React. You don't have to be completely neutral. If whoever you're talking to has been having a dreadful time, simply acknowledging this is important. Don't be afraid to say, you've had an awful time. You need to show that you've understood the situation by reacting to it. There are times when your friend or loved one may need to seek help urgently. If they are at risk of harming themselves or feel that they may act on suicidal thoughts they are experiencing, it's important that you help them seek medical attention as soon as possible. You can
Okay, so there are some more case studies that I think I'll skip. But in case you want to kind of discuss this, we can come back to them later. There is also a case study on difficult teacher-student encounter in case you want to discuss it at some point of time. Okay, so this is what I wanted to present. And maybe we can start discussing things. In case you want to go back to the case studies, we can do it later.
Okay. So thank you. Very quickly, I thought, is it possible for you to share this PowerPoint later on so that we can also circulate?
Sure.
Okay, that will be very helpful because I think at least that people will be able to find time for. I thought perhaps I'll let the others, in case there are others who have questions, I'll give them a chance, and I have one or two very short ones. Yeah, Professor Godara.
Thank you. So it was very interesting and helpful to go through this presentation set. And one of the things I've been experiencing is that giving students an opportunity to vent anything that they feel strongly about comes in very handy in reducing the amount of energy that the professors or the department need to put in to manage it. The sooner we do it, the better it is, and it clears a lot of misunderstanding. So just wanted, any structured ways that we allow student groups to do that and in a way connect better and prevent any of these, unfortunate directions that sometimes can happen to students' mind. So just your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Shall we collect one or two questions? There's Professor Dhariwal also.
All right. Okay.
Hi. So thanks a lot for making us a part of this. So my question is, I mean, these days we are spending, as we know, much more time with the digital mediums. And I saw in one of the slides, Prof. Sharan mentioning that, we should be having sessions of about 30 to 45 minutes at a time only, and which clearly, it's going much beyond that even for us. And over and above that, I think I also saw that, it's better to have recorded videos and rather than live sessions, and then, getting with students later to ask them how do they feel. So what are your suggestions into, since these online, learning is here to stay, like you said, so how does it impact health? Because pre-COVID era, we used to think that, we shouldn't be spending too much time with the digital mediums, but now I think, I don't think there is a way out. So any suggestions on, how do you cope with that? Maybe more deep breathing exercises in between, or, what else? I mean, this was something that was going on in my mind. Thank you, Professor Sharan.
So maybe you can take these two and then we'll go to the others.
I think both the points are very important about Professor Godara's comment. Uh, it's useful to have regular sessions with students where the venting kind of occurs. Not, it's not that one should let all the uh, kind of gas accumulate and then we give them one point to vent. It's usually better to have regular sessions in which they can communicate at timely intervals. I'll give you an example of in AIMS when COVID started, there was a lot of new work to be done and there was a lot of anxiety, particularly because the risk to the healthcare workers was very high. And what the director started at that time was he started 3 weekly sessions. So every alternate day he would have a, meeting in the auditorium from 8:30 to 10 when anyone could join. And there was a lot of heated discussions initially. So for the initial about 10 odd sessions, people were almost at war. And then gradually it kind of started settling down. So it's a good idea to have a series of sessions when there is high anxiety. Most of the time, the high anger is related to high anxiety. So if one recognizes that this is about anxiety, and if you provide a, a regular space where a person can come and kind of speak about whatever they have in their minds, it settles and dissipates over time. So the structure is basically that you need to have something which is a time which is allotted and where people who kind of have certain things to say, they have the possibility of coming and doing that. Dr. Guleria has done a lot of things which we would call feminine ways of managing things. He has been a very good leader in this situation.
Okay. There was Professor Day, but I think he has either given up or maybe he lost his connection.
I'll try to answer Dr. Dhariwal's question. The first thing is the time that IAP has talked about is for adolescents. So this is 15, 16-year-olds. So older people could be kind of held a little longer. But actually, this is also fitting in with the generally what is known about attention spans, that 40 minutes is about the maximum attention span that a person has at any given time. So 30 to 45 is ideally what we should be doing. IEP is suggesting that it should be 4 sessions in a day. Now, even schools are doing more than that, even except for very small children, they're doing it. And at this point of time, probably it is difficult to follow. But this guideline may be very useful when the schools actually reopen. So suppose the university is open and you are blending some online with offline kind of sessions, then probably one should be going back to this, that not more than 4 online sessions should be there. The rest of it should be offline work. About the recorded things, what is mentioned is that online session should be followed by recordings being given rather than that it should be recorded only. Recorded only is not interactive at all. So it's better to have a interactive session followed. And then since like if a person has gone through 8 of such sessions in a day, it's quite likely that they will not be able to focus on all of them. So if they have something to fall back upon, it works that way. The guidelines about screen time stay that one shouldn't be spending too much of time on screen, and usually like generally it is suggested that away from the actual work part of it, one shouldn't spend about more than about 2 hours per day. So, but now that online is becoming so much a part of one's work life, that it's going to be difficult. And as you suggested, that we should find time in between to get away from screen as and when it is possible, and for as long as it is possible.
So very quickly, I think Professor Day has an audio issue. He's saying his question is, please suggest some good resources that are research based to know and read about structured ways of addressing mental health issues with students. And also if there are resources on exercises like icebreakers and for making online engagement more lively. Apart from that, Professor Jain and Professor Achyutarao are waiting to ask.
Uh, Good
So,
resources for
good evening.
mental health issues with students. Obviously, there are many good resources available. Uh, what I would probably want to share with you, I can send it over, is uh, the one article which is about uh, how to deal with the COVID stress in the workplace. So that takes care of, it's written more from a management to employee perspective, but it fits in very well with the teacher and student perspective. So that would be one, but there are multiple. So if one had to make a list of some of these, I'll be able to send them over. The other question is about icebreakers. Now, icebreakers, uh, there are sites available with a lot of icebreakers. There are literally hundreds of them available. So, if one goes on to any kind of a website for icebreakers, one will find them. That I don't think would need an authoritative source. They're not evidence-based even otherwise.
I'll ask the SCS team to follow up on this and we'll share these resources on email. Professor Jain and Professor Achyutarao.
So, thank you, Professor. I want to ask one thing. Actually, academic question is not a related to stress, but what I get feedback from students is that we are running the semester as a normal semester, and we are doing online teaching and even online evaluation uh, of the online exams, and students are in lot of stress. They say that some of my friends are doing cheating, and I am honest. Actually, I don't want to do that, but at the end of the day, the grades matter, and there's a lot of uh, the stress among students also. Uh, what to do? You right? Like, shall I be honest? Shall I should not be honest? Shall I get into all this? So actually, what I feel actually as a faculty member is that this the grading should not be done as a regular semester. Means you do the teaching, you do everything, but at the end of the day, I think we should not do the grading as in a normal semester. So I think you are also a teacher in AIMS. So what's your view on that?
Okay. My being at AIMS doesn't help me here because AIMS is open. So we do, the exams are are offline to quite some extent. Uh, in general, the exams that AIMS has followed is pretty archaic. So there are big questions and there are big assessments, and most people pass anyway. So my personal experience at AIMS may not be of much use. What you're talking about is very pertinent otherwise, that we have been suddenly thrown into kind of a new situation for which we were not really uh, uh, we just did not have any idea about what is going to happen, and somehow we have scrambled into some kind of teaching methods have been used, and these are not taking care of all the things that need to be taken care of. So if we are going with the thing that they should meet the educational standards that was there pre-COVID, during the COVID period of time, then we are not being kind of, it's not valid. So your worry is genuine. The issue here is that it is a kind of a warlike situation, and to even expect the kind of fidelity or validity that you are seeking may not be possible. So if we go very strongly with your idea that they shouldn't, if it's not valid, we shouldn't have it at all, then this year should be declared null and void in that sense. So I suppose the way through is to have discussions amongst the various disciplines and come to consensual solutions rather than think that one way is right or the other way is right. Like what the Indian Academy of Pediatrics has kind of tried to do is to come to some kind of consensus as to what to expect, what not to expect. In general, they suggest that formal teaching should be given less emphasis this time. And in that sense, when you are assessing students, probably you will have to be a little bit more relaxed about what you're going to do. But each discipline will have to have its own consensus. I don't think there will be one kind of an answer. The other important thing is that I'm a mental health specialist. I'm not an educator in the full. Well, I'm not primarily an educator in that way.
Krishna?
Yes, thank you very much. My question is about many of my colleagues have felt that they've had to. Because everything is online, they are called upon for various things to make time for things that they normally would be invited to. So they take time, they travel and do it. But now people feel that, oh, you're just sitting at home, so let's do this, it's easier. So many colleagues have commitments, sometimes international commitments, which means staying up late at night. So just the demand on your time and efforts has multiplied. And with the assumption being it's easier because it's online. So how does one say no, or how does one retain boundaries without, sort of losing your professional credibility as somebody who's cooperative and easygoing? Thank you.
Look, frankly, I don't have an answer. Uh, if I attend to both parts of your question, that if I don't want to appear bad and I have to say no, these two things are not possible. So one has to learn to be assertive. One has to learn to say that this is the limit of what I'm ready to do. And if one is able to explain that this is the amount of work that I have and I cannot take further kind of further things on hand, it's something that one has to learn to do. It's more difficult in the helping professions actually, in the sense that you feel even it's not only about being nice to people. Sometimes, like uh, in our situation, you feel very guilty if you're not helping, in the sense that you're supposed to take care of people. And if, like for example, in the COVID times, with my WhatsApp number being available to all 3,600 students on the campus, I get calls all the time, and a young 17-year-old doesn't usually understand that this is urgent or this is not urgent. For them, it is urgent. So if their dog has died, it is urgent to them, and sometimes one has to respond to it with the same kind of urgency. So one has to learn to kind of set limits. And the issue, the other thing about the international commitment, they were always in the evenings and night, even otherwise. So in some ways, things have not really changed for us. If you are working with international teams, a lot of that work, there the issue is about a certain degree of colonial mindsets, that the timings work for the Western hemisphere. It always doesn't work for us. So these are things which are not easy to solve, and each one of us will have to learn to be assertive in our own ways.
Right. Okay, so I think given your advice about having 45-minute sessions,
I just want to add one thing,
yes.
Ritika. One thing which many of us have to do sometime. 2 meetings at the same time, online, on 2 computers. So you're basically, this is another issue of online business, that you pay more attention to the important meeting and the other one is going on, or some lecture is going on. So that's another thing which we have never done before. This is a
Right.
new thing, having multiple meetings going on at the same time. I just wanted to say that another new thing, new dimension.
So for that, I would have to ask you for the advice as to what should be done about that.
So what I do is, if one is a lecture going on, and I can do that, and the other one is a real discussion going on back to back, and that lecture has many parts which I understand, and so I can kind of give a low priority to this thing. So then we can do that. But you want to participate in that because you are a member of some committee and all that. So you have to kind of balance that, because otherwise you would like not to participate in that, but you are a member of a committee and that you have to give some input. So you must know. So it puts you that you should know, now I have to switch off here and switch on there. So because now my part is going to come very soon, I have to give some comments. So I need to now focus on this. So this is a new game. I think we have all learned now. So thank you.
Right. Okay. So I'll just quickly ask Dr. Shachi Mathur to deliver like a vote of thanks, so to speak.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharan. I think this session has been wonderful for us as well. Although we don't come under faculty, we are just counselors. But the kind of pressure that we are dealing with 24/7, our phone rings and there is no time out for us. Your session has really, really helped us understand that, yes, we can still manage and still do it all. And most importantly, it's my privilege to propose this vote of thanks to you, Dr. Sharan, for having taken time out for us. And I know that you had so many other preoccupations to address us on this very, very vital, important topic is something that has benefited us all. And with your vast knowledge about this subject, I think we've learned a lot and we'll definitely be wiser from this discourse. And once again, I would like to thank on behalf of IIT Delhi and say thank you very much for being here with us. And I would also like to thank our director, our BSW students, our deputy director, dean of students, Professor Kera, especially to Vidushi, who's been so busy trying to get things organized and all the technical hitches being handled by her. Thank you so much, and all the faculty members for having made time for this session. Really grateful, and I hope you have enjoyed this session. Thank you so much, everyone, and Dr. Sharan. Thank you so much for your time once again.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sachi.
Okay, so we hope we'll have other opportunities to interact with you, and with that, we'll close this session. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.